Welcome to the explainer. So look, we've literally all been there, right? You walk out to your garden or you check on that prized houseplant and it's just miserable. It's wilting, it's yellowing, and it is endlessly frustrating. And naturally, your immediate instinct is to panic. You want to grab the watering can or maybe just blindly reach for whatever fertilizer is in the shed. But hold on a second. Acting without actually knowing the true cause? Yeah, that can often make things so much worse.
It's the ultimate gardener's dilemma, isn't it? Why is my plant dying? Well, instead of wildly guessing at the answer, we really need to shift our whole mindset. We've got to stop acting like panicked bystanders and start acting like botanical detectives. Diagnosing plant problems isn't about intuition. It's a rigorous, step-by-step process of deductive logic and forensic science.
Okay, let's dive into this. I absolutely love this quote from Penn State Extension because it reminds us that treating your garden as a literal crime scene is exactly what the experts do. The possibilities of what killed your plant aren't actually infinite. By applying systematic, deductive reasoning, we can rule out the impossible and, actually uncover the true culprit.
So here's our official detective's notepad for today. We're going to cover the botanical crime scene, the disease triangle, clues, signs versus symptoms, applying deductive logic, biotic versus abiotic suspects, and finally, solving the case.
All right, step 1, the botanical crime scene.
Our investigation begins right here. But before we start dusting for prints or hauling in suspects, we have to ask an incredibly basic question. Has a crime actually even been committed? You absolutely must establish a baseline of what a normal plant looks like. It is so common to mistake genetic expressions like the naturally yellow-green leaves of variegated thyme for some kind of nutrient deficiency. Or, if you see older needles turning yellow and dropping from the inside of an evergreen in the fall, that's just normal seasonal shedding. So rule number 1, don't mistake natural plant biology for a botanical crime.
Moving on to step 2, the disease triangle. Now, once we've confirmed that the plant's condition is genuinely abnormal, we have to look at the motive and means of our suspects. Listen, infectious diseases don't just strike randomly out of nowhere. They have a very strict set of rules they have to follow. And this brings us to the disease triangle, which is basically the absolute foundational rule of plant pathology. It proves that a sick plant isn't just a victim of bad luck. It's the result of a very specific alignment of conditions.
For an infectious disease to actually take hold, you need 3 specific elements to exist simultaneously. First, a susceptible host, meaning the plant is vulnerable, right? Second, an active pathogen, like a fungus or a bacterium. And third, a favorable environment, something like high humidity or super soggy soil that allows that pathogen to thrive. Here's the genius part of the deductive process. If you break just one side of this triangle, like, say, improving the drainage to change the environment, the crime literally cannot occur.
Which brings us to step 3, clues, signs versus symptoms. Okay, with the parameters of our crime established, we are now gathering evidence at the scene. And to do this accurately, we have to separate the victim's reaction from the culprit's actual fingerprints. You need to understand this critical forensic distinction between signs and symptoms. Signs are the literal physical presence of the pest, the fuzzy fungal spores, the sticky insect frass, or, the actual bugs themselves. Those are the fingerprints. Symptoms, on the other hand, are just the plant's physical distress signals: wilting, yellowing, chlorosis, brown leaf scorch. Symptoms tell us the plant is hurt, sure, but they don't always tell us who hurt it.
Take a look at this massive abnormal swelling on the tree trunk known as a gall. This is a classic symptom. It tells us the tree's growth has been completely hijacked. But the tricky thing, galls can be caused by fungi, by bacteria, or even by insects. Because multiple culprits can cause the exact same symptom, we have to gather more contextual clues to narrow down that suspect pool.
And evaluating structural symptoms really helps frame our interrogation of the plant's health. On one hand, you might see progressive dieback, where branches die from the tips inward. That often signals a root issue or maybe a specific canker. On the other hand, a general decline affecting the whole canopy usually points us toward complex, interacting stressors over time. See how those clues start to paint a picture?
All right, step 4, applying deductive logic.
So, we have our clues. Now it's time to process this evidence using a highly logical process of elimination. This is where your deductive reasoning truly shines. Let's walk through the diagnostic steps, kind of mimicking a detective's internal monologue, right? Step 1, what exactly is the host plant? Step 2, are the damaged plants grouped together randomly or in a weirdly uniform line? Step 3. Did this damage happen overnight, or has it been creeping up over weeks? And Step 4. What's the environmental history here? Was there a sudden freeze, a nasty drought, or maybe a recent chemical spray nearby?
Let's dig into that with Step 5, biotic versus abiotic suspects.
By answering those temporal and spatial questions, our deductions allow us to divide all our suspects into two distinct lineups. We have biotic culprits, which are living pathogens and pests, and abiotic culprits, which are non-living environmental stressors. Just compare the modus operandi of these two groups. Abiotic problems, like a frost, chemical drift, or drought, usually strike uniformly. They have a sudden onset, and they don't spread to new growth. Plus, they tend to hit multiple different plant species in the exact same area. Biotic pests, like a fungal infection or an insect infestation, they spread randomly, they get progressively worse over time, and they almost always target just one specific family of plants.
So the crucial point here is that observing physical evidence, like highly unusual deformities or burls on a tree, requires you to combine your spatial and temporal clues. If you see this on one single tree and it develops slowly, you're looking at a localized, likely biotic issue. But if every tree on the block suddenly looks distorted overnight, no way that's a bug. You're looking at an abiotic environmental event. Context is absolutely everything.
And hey, detectives, do not forget the underground evidence. Honestly, so many plant mysteries are solved beneath the soil. You've got to check root health. Healthy roots should be firm and light-colored. If the outer layer just sloughs off easily in your hand, you've got root rot. Also, test for soil compaction using a simple screwdriver. If you can't easily push it 6 inches into the soil, your plant's roots are literally suffocating. And guess what? That will mimic nutrient deficiency symptoms perfectly.
Finally, Step 6. Solving the case.
Okay, we've evaluated the crime scene, checked the disease triangle, gathered signs and symptoms, and separated our biotic and abiotic suspects. Now you must synthesize all these deductions into a solid hypothesis. Use your gathered clues and that deductive logic to rule out the impossible causes. If the damage happened overnight to 3 totally different species of plants, you know it's not a progressive fungus. Never jump at the easiest answer. And please don't just blindly pour nitrogen fertilizer on a yellowing plant. You might literally just be feeding an underlying root rot problem.
But listen, even the greatest detectives call in the forensics lab. Before you apply any chemical treatments based on your brilliant deductions, verify your findings. Consult peer-reviewed guides, or better yet, take a physical sample to your local extension office or a plant disease diagnostic lab. They're the ultimate backup to confirm your deductive work.
Which leaves us with this final critical question. The next time you find a prized plant looking sick, how are you going to react? Are you going to revert to that old habit of blindly guessing the cure, just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best? Or will you put on your detective hat, examine the botanical crime scene, and use deductive logic to uncover the truth? The health of your garden literally depends on it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy sleuthing out there.